Hello and welcome with another live chat. Today I have with us Natasha Moore, who is our UX UI expert, and Brandon Cooper, who is one of our mid-level developers. And today we're going to talk about integration. So I want to open up and just kind of give an overview of what integration is. Software development seems to be moving into the direction of more of an integration between multiple systems. A lot of off the shelf or products can be purchased that allow you to do the majority of your business functions, but a lot of times you'll have something like Salesforce, and maybe you have Dynamics. And you need to get those two systems talking together. That was actually a bad example because they're both CRMs, but let's just say you're using both and you want to get them integrated. And so we get into the realm of needing to get these systems talking together, make sure we're not duplicating data, and so that we can pull data from the whole enterprise to get the full picture about what's going on. There's several types of integration that when I'm considering integration project, there are two major types. There's several, but there's two major types that I consider. Number one is, and this is the one that I'm least likely to pick if I can avoid it, and that would be a database integration. So, for example, we have a client who has a website, and that website basically feeds data over to another system, and so you can kind of think about the website as kind of like a front end interface for the for thank you, Ernest. You can kind of think about the system or the integration of the system is kind of like a front end for this back end system, right? And the way that we integrate with this system, or way that the system gets integrated, is we basically push data to a table inside of the other system, and then we process data in that table and put that into that back end system. So one of the issues there is this is what I would consider a database integration. Okay. And this is, if you can avoid a database integration, you really want to kind of stay away from that type of integration. And the reason why is because if I'm using a custom application that has a SQL Server backend, and it has a UI, and it's made by it's a product that you purchased. When I insert records directly into the database, I'm bypassing all of the application logic, right? So if I insert data into the customer table, I'm bypassing all the applications validation, and I'm bypassing any business rules that get fired when we create a new customer record. So typically, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying typically if you can avoid it, you kind of want to not just push data directly into another database. Also, you can become version locked by doing that. So let's just say I have a back end CRM system, and the vendor comes out with a new version of that product. Then I could be locked because maybe they did some type of schema change that would kind of break my integration. So then as the application new versions and features are released, you wind up with a problem where maybe you can't upgrade because you've done some customizations or you've done some deep integrations, and so it can limit your ability to apply even security updates or that kind of thing. So I'm not saying don't do database integration. I'm saying if you can avoid it, do it. The second type of major integration, which is the one that I like, and typically back in the day, this wasn't as readily available, but most products have this now. And that would be the API level integration. API level integration is great because the API is written by the vendor. You're going to get all your validation. You're going to get all the business rules. Say, like, for example, creating a customer record, and we push that data to the API. It's going to do all the correct things that need to be done to support that customer record. And we also get the ability to query it for data. So we can hit, the endpoints that return data and stuff like that. So API integration is the preferred method. And database integration, unless you really have to, should probably be avoided. So I just want to kind of cover those two levels of integration real quick before we go into the questions. Just to kind of give the audience kind of an understanding of a little bit of an understanding of what we're talking about. And so with those two, there's other ways to do it. you output a text file, and then you import that text file into another system. That's another way to do it. And I kind of consider that kind of a loose integration, actually, and it's probably a lot of work there in kind of automating that process. So typically, you want to kind of focus around the API integration, if you can get it. If not, there's some other strategies you can use. Such as pulling data from both systems and combining them into a database that's external to both systems, where you can do your reporting and that type of those type of features that you may need for your application. So I wanted to cover that real quick, with a little longer than I wanted, but that's okay. And so, Tosh, you want to go ahead with the questions?
Yep. So our first question today is, what are some key considerations when planning for technical integration?
Okay, so I'm gonna go first, and then we'll let Brandon take a crack at it. So some of the key things to consider with the integration, again, is number one is going to be the type of integration you want to do, or you have to do, and whether that's going to be a database integration or whether we have access to an API. So that's going to be the number one thing that I'm going to consider, and I'm always going to lean more towards integrating on the API side for those reasons that we stated earlier. So the big consideration basically is the how. And then the second consideration would be time and cost. So I'd like to keep those up high on my thinking when I'm considering what approach I want to take to a given situation. What about you, Brandon?
I mean, I mostly agree with what you said. I was also going to say, like, I also wanted to say difference in technologies
Yeah,
could be a consideration we want to think about.
yeah, for sure. And then I think the interesting thing is that I think the use of REST and API layer kind of
Yeah.
smooth that out, because we kind of move into this language agnostic area with those capabilities, which I really like. Really, it's nice to be able to just pick whatever tool you want to use and not necessarily have to have a deep concern about, is anyone going to, well, you should always be concerned about if someone can support it, but I mean, there's some tools that are just better for some jobs, and so it's nice to be able to be like, yeah, we'll do this in Python, we'll do this in .NET, and kind of bounce back around if you have the team to support that kind of technology. Some teams are, one language, that's what we do, everything is C#, and so they move forward with that, and then all your solutions are going to be in C#. I don't necessarily think that's always a great idea, given where we've evolved to in the industry as a whole. All right, Tasha, number two.
All right. Number two, can you describe a time when you faced challenges during the integration of different technical systems? How were these resolved?
Okay, so one of the most challenging integrations I ever had to do was on a military project, and I can talk about this particular piece. We had to integrate with another system. So you can think there's two phases, also two phases to an integration. Of number one is you can need a feature of an external application. So if you use OAuth, or you use Google to do as your identity provider, or use Microsoft as your identity provider, that's essentially an integration with a product whose primary function is authentication. So I don't want to build my own authentication. I don't recommend anyone build their authentication. There's people who every day eat, live, and breathe authentication, and as far as security is concerned, it's probably better not to go the roll your own route, unless you're one of the guys that invented some of our current authentication methods. So we had to integrate with a security system for authentication called CAS. And so we had to CAS allows you to use YubiKeys. So for authentication, so that's a key that you plug into your device, and every time you log in, you have to touch it. And then that key basically is cryptographically signed with your user ID, and so it allows you to authenticate into the system. And that integration was problematic from the standpoint of the type of messaging that we had to send over to the API. That was incredibly complex, and it didn't wire into the .NET Core, the HTTP pipeline very well, and so we had to kind of do some workarounds with that. But that's one of the tougher integrations, and again, there I'm leveraging integration to do authentication. So that in my mind is kind of more of like a feature integration instead of like a full kind of like back end unifying our data and displaying it that way. But yeah, that's one of my most challenging projects to work on, was basically getting a CAS provider, which wasn't on a Windows machine, so it was Linux, and then figuring out all the security certificates that needed to be exchanged, and how the when you do that type of authentication against CAS, you're using something called SAML, which is a version of XML for security, and getting all that messaging right on a basically what was a black box was a bit of a challenge. What about you, Brandon?
Sorry. I think the most difficult integration challenge I've come across was like trying to. I mean, we kind of, with our current client, we have integration with a external system for like data management, and
Sure.
so we have to like synchronize our data with them,
Yeah.
sending back and forth. And we have encountered issues with that as their data structure changes, and so that's kind of this. And we had an application to do that we had to kind of reverse engineer
Yep.
because
Didn't
we
have
lost the source code.
before. Yep.
So that's kind of been my most challenging thing with integration. We just kind of had to reverse engineer that application and build it into our current.
Yeah. Going along with what you're talking about, that integration specifically was around moving, basically kind of consider read-only data around between two systems. So the reason why we moved the data, interestingly enough, was because the other system was under such a load from the was under a load from just general use within the organization.
Yeah.
And so for us to, the website gets hit a lot. We're doing a lot of requests. We're handling a lot of data coming back that we're serving up to various automotive dealers, and getting that integration in, or reading that data real time from the actual source database, even though it would just be a read-only check, would just add additional load on the server. So the developers that were there before us made the decision that we're just going to basically copy these tables, and we're going to move them over. So that is another type of integration that I hadn't thought of, Brandon. It's an interesting point to bring up, where we're basically replicating data so that it can be used by another system, because we don't want to add additional load to the back end system that where that data is actually housed. So you can think of that as a system of record, right? That particular system is where, if that system says X and our system says Y, that system wins. So that's system of record, right? That's where they're doing all their maintenance and everything. And we need that data to make decisions and serve up requests on that side. That was a good one, Brandon. All right, Tasha, what we got next?
Okay, the final question. What strategies can be used to ensure seamless integration between disparate technical systems? I think I said that word right.
Yeah, you got that right.
Okay.
So some of the strategies you can use are okay. So let me think. So let's assume we have two systems. Maybe one of them is SQL Server with a web front end and an exposed API, and the other system's on Linux. Maybe it's using Postgres, and it also kind of has an API layer. So the way that you resolve that is you're most likely not going to build a system or not around the integration. You're going to want to integrate those two systems are kind of separate, right? They both kind of run in different worlds. I mean, Linux you got cron jobs, and Windows you got task scheduler, two different operating systems, that kind of thing. So the way that I would look at that is, depending on what kind of problem I'm trying to solve, I would kind of look at that from the standpoint of I want to integrate it. Ideally, always want to integrate it on the API level. So as long as there's an exposed API on both endpoints, you could put kind of a middle API layer in there that can kind of manage moving that data, querying the data, putting the data together, and then serving it up. So that'd be, for example, for instance, maybe maybe I store on the Linux system and the Postgres database. Maybe I'm storing data related to customer information because that's all hooked up to another system that's running other business processes, and so all the customer information is stored over there. And maybe the website is used to collect orders, and so when I integrate, I need to be able to assign orders to customers. So I can build up a new API layer that consumes APIs from both sides that expose the order and put the customer data together, right? So I'm going to query over to this other system using the REST API. I'm going to get back the customer information, and I'm going to sync that up with their orders that are over here. And then the new API layer that I've added is going to combine the order and the customer information together. This is a similar pattern to what you do in microservices, by the way, but you're going to put these two items together and you're going to serve it up. And so when I request order information from the new API endpoint, I'm actually going to be talking to two different systems to get that information and kind of smash it together. What do you think, Brandon?
I mean, you basically just said what I was thinking. Just make an extra API layer, and you could use that to like translate and transform the data from either.
Yeah. Hiding complexity is always a good thing. So, well, never mind. Take that back. It's you want to try to do that, right? Like if I have a consumer and they're going to consume this customer order information they were talking about previously, I want to give them an endpoint that gives them all the information they need, and they don't really need to understand that I'm querying this Linux box and this Postgres database and this SQL Server database over here, and then I'm putting the information together. And they also don't need to understand on the return when they send us a new order, it has the customer information, it has the order information, the items that they ordered and everything. They don't need to understand that I'm going to take that and I'm going to break that apart. So I simplify the interaction between those two systems by, for lack of a better word, hiding that there's two systems that's doing the work. And then the logic to tie those two systems together is kind of in my new endpoint. You'll kind of see that pattern happen quite a bit on more complex systems. So there's something called an API aggregation layer that you can build up that is basically takes a bunch of microservices and composites them together, puts them together, and builds up your return results and then breaks them out. So it knows how to speak to the 20 different microservices that are running the website, but the website is only consuming one endpoint. So it's also a way to by building up an API layer on top of a more complex API layer, and then giving it either to your end users or consumers of your application, you give them the ability to simplify once that's kind of going out to your organization, and you can kind of hide some of your infrastructure implementation details in that. So I think, Tosh, that was it, right? We had like 3 questions today we want to talk about. You guys want to add anything else? I'm trying to keep these videos short for you guys, so we're not blowing past the hour mark. And we can get some information offered. If anyone ever has any questions, you're welcome to post them in the chat or DM me on LinkedIn. You can hit up some of our other channels. We're checking and watching content over there. And I'm happy to discuss any technology topics that anyone is interested in. I am also have an active call out. I'm working to get some other people to join the live stream so we could learn a little bit more about how technology is used in various industries. So that's an open call. Anyone who wants to come sit down and have a quick conversation about what their industry does and how their industry utilizes technologies and some of the challenges they face in a particular industry, hit us up and we'll get back to you. Anything to say before we go, guys?
I don't have anything to say other than this week's theme that we are going to be discussing is integration. So there will be more integration topics coming this week. And then also, if you keep an eye on our LinkedIn page, you will see the videos that I've been making outside of our live streams to help explain integrations and how it could benefit your business or you in your personal life. So I would just keep an eye out for that and follow our LinkedIn page as well as Bill so that you can keep in contact with the live streams.
Yeah, I really like the some of the animations that we're putting out to kind of we're really trying to simplify concepts. We really want to present to a wide audience. I can go, obviously I could go technically deep, but we're trying to keep this. I want to raise awareness of how these systems work to a broader audience than just developers. Yeah. So that's a good thing. Brandon, anything to add before we go?
Nope, not for me.
All right. Well, thank you too for joining us. Thank you for watching our live stream, and we will be back tomorrow at 3. I'm still kind of trying to play around with the time to see if there's a better time slot. But I'll give you guys some warning before we switch time slots. So for tomorrow, we're going to target 3, and we would love for you to attend. Ernest, thank you for your comment. We appreciate it. And everyone, have a great day. Keep coding, keep solving problems, because that's what we do. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.